What's going on, everyone? Bardown Breakdown, back in it, episode 108. And we are very, very excited to have our buddy Graham from Tokyo Police Club hanging out with us today, talk a little bit of hockey, a little bit of music. Graham, what's going on? How are you?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me on. I'm just vibing on a Tuesday night in Toronto, man.
Heck yeah. I feel like there's nothing better to do. So, like, when you're vibing in Toronto, what are you doing? Like, when you're going out in Toronto, hanging out, like, where are the spots near you? Where's it all
Well,
go?
with the obvious caveat that we're not going out and vibing in Toronto
Of course.
lately. I'm noticing the divide grow between Canada and the States. I now all of my American friends are like, yeah, I was at this or I was doing that. I got vaccinated. I'm like, nope, not here. We're just staying in our houses. It's not going great. But normally speaking, Toronto's a great bar city, although the prices at the bars suck. Like, you go into the bar and it's the coolest dive bar you've ever been in your life, and then somehow it's $8 for a can of beer.
Yeah.
So that's not. I mean, you get the healthcare for free. You pay a lot for the drinks. So on balance, who's to say if it's good or not? But there's a sports bar right down the street from my house called Round the Horn. That's kind of A, it's 3 minutes from my couch. B, it's like, because we don't really do anything in a chill way in the city. So a few years ago, like right when the Raptors started getting good and Drake got involved in everything, all the cool kids started to get into basketball. It became sort of like it's hip in the city now to be into basketball. And so all these hipster sports bars opened up, which was cool because before the sports bars were, it was a pretty weak scene. It was a lot of bad wings and sort of like corporate vibes.
Mm-hmm.
But the hipster sports bars are, insufferable in their own hipster way. And Round the Horn is just like chill. It's a rare Toronto thing where it's chill. So I'm going there to like buy all my takeout beer and stuff to try and support them through the pandemic.
Awesome.
Now, I just have to jump in here because this is, like, I feel like Canada and the United States are so similar, but then what you just were bringing up is so different. Because here in the States, hipsters have taken to hockey. Where in Canada, you're saying hipsters are liking basketball? That blows my mind.
Hockey is easily the least hip sport in Toronto, at least specifically. Like, I can tell that it genuinely affects my cultural cachet. That my main thing is hockey. I'm like, yeah, if the Raptors make it to the second round of the playoffs, I will start watching every game. That's my deal.
Okay.
But I don't. But I understand that that means I only put in a little bit of energy. So if they win, I only get back a little bit of energy, like happened 2 years ago or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
I had a great time watching them through that playoffs. I had some good nights at bars. I was happy when they won. But I knew people who were like ecstatic in that way that only a sports championship can make you, and I didn't feel any of that. That would be me if the Leafs ever win. So yeah, I think in Canada hockey is everywhere. It's not, in the States it's a little bit more niche. Here it's like we all grew up, especially if you were a boy, you grew up either playing hockey or it was like a thing that you didn't play hockey. All the the bullies and the jerks and the jocks at your school were hockey players.
Yeah, that's also so different.
And so the cultural role that it plays is just completely different. And so people can't look at it as like a fun sport or a weird little, unheralded thing to get into because they bring with it a lifetime of baggage. It's also why hockey players are also like personality-less robots. Because if you grow up in Canada playing hockey, when you're like 5 years old, they know that you're going to be Sidney Crosby. Yeah. And then everyone hates you, and so you develop this shell of boringness to try and shield yourself. It's the least charismatic sport, and that's why it's Canada's fault.
But so we talked about it on our last episode. We were talking about how ESPN and the NHL just reforged a partnership.
Yeah.
Now it's a big thing for the sport of hockey in general, but is it more of an American thing? Because I know up north you guys have TSN, and that's really like your major sports outlet. Is it, or am I off base there? Does ESPN have a big presence up where you guys are as well?
No, there is not. Like, I don't even know if you can get ESPN, maybe if you get one of those insane 900 channel, premium elite super Emerald Plus cable deals, you can get some ESPN in with it.
Yeah.
But it's TSN carries all the ESPN stuff, and it has a lot of the same branding. We have Sports Center, but it's just TSN Sports Center, different guys.
Okay.
Different
Interesting. Okay.
And there's also a channel called Sportsnet, and in Canada, this is getting a little bit into the weeds maybe, but there's like two major telecom companies here, Rogers and Bell, who are like, I don't know, what's the American, like AT&T or same kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And so because we have an organization called the CRTC, which regulates all media stuff in this country to keep America from coming in and stomping all over it, basically, but also in a way that is now enforcing these weird monopolies. There's just really the two big companies. And there was a third one called Shaw, and just this week, Rogers announced they're going to buy them. So there you go.
Yeah.
But so Rogers owns one of them, and Bell owns the other one, and I forget which is which. But that's always, whenever the NHL contract comes up, it's always just between which of them is going to bust out more money for it. And then there's also the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, the CBC, which is our sort of like public broadcaster. And they just get some hockey. I'm not sure if it's like legally mandated or everyone just feels sorry for them. But because they, in the 60s, that was, my dad watched hockey on CBC growing up. It's called Hockey Night in Canada. It's it's a real, like a beloved cultural institution that people take very, very seriously. When it had a famous hockey theme song and the CBC let the rights lapse and the rights holder of the song sold it to, I think, TSN instead. And they talked in government. They had a conversation about mandating that the rights to the song be returned to the CBC because it was so iconic. It didn't end up happening, but like that's
thing I've ever heard in my life.
I love that.
That's why hockey isn't cool here. Nobody thinks it's cool because this is what's going. You hear this in the news, and you're like, that's incredibly lit.
It's one of those things that I'm kind of flabbergasted by because hockey is really so cool in America. When you think about all of the franchises that are in these non-hockey areas, you think of the Tampa Bay Lightning, the Nashville Predators, the Arizona Coyotes, all the teams on the West Coast where hockey would never otherwise. Well, the West Coast, yes, but like anywhere it kind of like south, you think, oh, who would care about hockey? But the passion level of these fans. Now, don't get me wrong. When you get up north, the passion in those fan bases is pretty extreme too. But the cool factor in America, I think, is what makes it so interesting. And I get that same feeling about the NFL, like what you're talking about with the NHL up north. I feel that with the NFL. It's like, you're stupid, like dumb, grunts or whatever you want to call them, are just sitting there in football jerseys being like, yelling at the refs, beer gut, Budweiser in hand, kind of deal. Like, but that's such an interesting contrast because hockey really is the counterculture in America, which is why this podcast over the 108 episodes we've done has been such an interesting parallel, because you've got the alternative music scene, which just ties in so well in both America and Canada. But the perspective that you have is just interesting because it's not one that we're really privy to.
Yeah, and there's even, the Canadian Grammys are called the Junos. I'm sorry if I'm telling you stuff you already know. I'm sorry, but for the listeners,
but any story about the Junos?
Yeah, we've had a few great Juno stories. So if you have one, we're all for it.
Well, I was just going to mention the Juno Cup, which I suspect that you've heard of, which is like every year around the Junos they have a big tournament. And all the guys that are big into the Juno Cup and that are the good hockey players in Canadian music are even like the establishment acts and the record industry bigwigs. And it's none of the cool young labels or the cool young bands. So even the role that hockey plays within the industry is very much establishment. It's very much like, just like everything else in the music industry, old white guys. And obviously that's not cool now, nor should it be.
Yeah. So I want to make a quick transition here just to hear the kind of the ins and outs of it. But so, we're talking about Canadian labels and I guess cool and established Canadian labels. I automatically, in my brain, being a huge alternative music fan, I just gravitate towards Dine Alone. So, and I know you guys, have a partnership with Dine Alone. I think everything but Elephant Shell you did through Dine Alone, or maybe the newest the self-titled record wasn't. But I know you have a long relationship with Dine Alone. So in Canadian culture, is Dine Alone considered like a sort of a counterculture alternative thing, or are they like a, like a big label?
I don't know the answer to that question in the wide culture, because I've lived my entire adult life as an industry guy, like in the music industry in my way. So in the music industry, they're big, and again, it's there's so few labels in this country, period. It's not like the States where there's, you can go to different cities and different states and have label scenes and all that. We have a little bit of that. There will be a record label in Winnipeg or Vancouver, Montreal for sure, and Quebec is its own kind of thing. They're siloed off culturally in a lot of ways, or at least they sort of have a lot more of their own thing. But for the most part, it's like there's sort of, other than the major labels, of which there are 2 or 3 maybe, there's maybe 3, 4, 5 indie labels, of which Dine Alone seems to me the biggest. I don't know what their market share is or any of that stuff. Thank God. But what it feels like to the average consumer, I don't think people care about record labels anymore, really, for the most part. I feel like the days of flipping over a record to look at the logo it's over, because you can't. Now you have to scroll to the bottom of the Spotify album and see if they've remembered to add it.
Yeah, that's very true.
I do that all the time. I look all the time. I don't know what's wrong with me.
No,
am I weird for doing that?
No, I think
we're old.
Being from that older generation and being like kind of the music nerds that I know you and I are, and I presume, Graham, you're probably also a self-proclaimed nerd of music. It's just like that kind of stuff. That kind of stuff is interesting to me. Like I collect records, and like, I'll throw a record on my turntable and like I'll actually look at like the Matrix and like look at all this stuff and who actually pressed this record, what pressing plant did it, like that kind of stuff is just is really interesting to me. So we'll come back to Dine Alone, because I have a couple of questions about that. But the first question that I want to ask you, just because I think it's fascinating that I'm getting to talk to you. So my first introduction to Tokyo Police Club, long before Joe Manzione, long before Sal Panza, who we're going to talk about, because
I can't wait.
Because if I don't talk about Sal Panza on this podcast, he's gonna find me and chop me to bits. But so my first introduction to Tokyo Police Club was Tessellate on an Elephant Shell, which I think a lot of people who are Tokyo Police Club fans from the kind of very genesis of you guys would probably say the same thing. But Elephant Shell was released on Saddle Creek, which I think is such an interesting thing, because I think of Saddle Creek as one of those record labels that if they weren't around putting out the music that they were doing in the late 90s to early 2000s, a lot of this kind of alternative music probably wouldn't be as popular in the sphere as it is. But so, you guys got to put out a record on Saddle Creek, Cursive, Bright Eyes, Rilo Kiley, all those great artists. So were you guys, being on Saddle Creek, would you guys say that the beginning of your band was influenced by like that Saddle Creek style of artist, or was it just sort of serendipitous that you ended up releasing a record with them?
Well, probably a little bit of both. Of course it's hard to know what exactly you've been influenced by and how. We all listened to the Bright Eyes records in high school specifically, because that was, Lifted came out when I think we were in grade 9 or 10. And it was hard to miss that. And then the Cursive record was pretty big in the friend group, the Faint as well.
Yeah, the Faint.
And the Faint, because when Tokyo started, that like dance rock world of the music and stuff was a lot bigger. And I think there was like a rehearsal where Tokyo Police Club was going to be a more of a dance rock band.
Okay.
And then Greg was like, I'm never playing that beat. That's the like
yeah.
And so then we stopped being a dance rock band. And I think that a lot of that came from the Faint, but we got it indirectly. But we were definitely way more influenced by your Strokes, by your Broken Social Scenes, Arcade Fires.
Okay, yeah.
And so signing to Saddle Creek was more, we knew it was cool and we thought it was cool, and we were, we were excited to be involved in that world, but it was more of like a business decision than a dream come true. In the way that we didn't sign with them because we were like, I don't care. Don't show me a contract. Don't show me an advance. Just get me on Saddle Creek. It was more like they seemed like the right label to go with at the time for the record.
Sure.
In retrospect, it means a lot more to me that we were on it than it did at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I was just, we were like 21, so nothing meant anything to us. We were just vibing.
Yeah, you're just super stoked to, get an opportunity to, get to do what you like to do and get paid and get to get out there and go on tour, which is kind of the dream for everybody, right? So, so I've found, listening, kind of getting ready for this episode with you. Like I like to listen to some of the stuff that I liked and some of the stuff that I missed out on. And one of the things I missed out on in your lineage was Infinite Radness, which I'm kind of bummed
that I did.
I'm bummed that I did though, because I went back and listened to it and I really enjoyed it. And I mean, obviously I love the the Smashing Pumpkins rip there, but so, listening to Elephant Shell and even Champ, which I know you guys had done the 10-year anniversary just, I think, this past year. So congrats on that. That,
Thank you.
By the way, just to let you know, Mikey, because you want to know this, that Splatter came and went. It's gone. Can't get it. It's gone. I can't get it. You can't get it. I can't get it. It bums me out that I can't get it. But so
I'm
listening.
I'm looking at mine right now.
Oh, you son of a gun, you.
It's on my, well, I never kept the original Champ pressing, which was on white vinyl. Yeah. I never kept. All these years later, I was like, why don't I have one? It's my record, and I have to like buy one on Discogs, so I'm not making that mistake.
I had a copy of Champ. So I tell this like to every single person, but it's part of my life. I collected records from like 2011 to 2017, like in a severe way. Mm-hmm. I think like when I stopped record collecting, I had like 1,000 LPs. Like it was bad news. So then I finally like sold a lot of them off. I moved with my fiance to Florida, and then she bought me a record player for our anniversary. So I started collecting again. So all these records that I had that I still want, I can't get because 6 years in records and vinyl is like unbelievable. So all this stuff that was out of print then is even further out of print now. But so I had a copy of Champ. It was like it was the fully red jacket.
Yeah.
And I think that was the one that was on white vinyl, and I'm missing the crap out of that because I just, for some reason, like I would love to just throw it on and listen to it in that retrospect, other than just kind of bopping through it on Spotify and all that stuff. But anyways,
it's different. Anyways, melancholy though.
Yeah, so that's what I'm trying to get to. So Elephant Shell and Champ, which are two of my of the records that I listen to the most, when you listen to Melancholy, it's a little, it's different. You can kind of see the trajectory that you guys have gone to, and then even listening to the self-titled record TPC, a little bit of a departure even from there. So I know like the old boilerplate answer of, we grew up and we changed what we were listening to, but did you guys feel that as a band just starting out with like records like Elephant Shell and Champ, that you almost like you had a sound that was, I guess, like, how do I want to say it? Like almost easier to like sell and navigate. And then as you grow older as a band and as you realize, well, we're established now we can sort of break from that mold a little bit and try to be a little bit more creative when we can, or a little bit more, with more artistry in mind, or how does that move through your discography?
Well, it's funny because it's in the way that it ended up and the way that people are interpreted it or whatever. I think it very much ended up being the way you described it. But our intention was pretty much inverse to that. It was, because we grew up in the suburbs of Toronto in a town called Newmarket. And in the 90s, when we were kids, the internet was, nascent, if existent at all. And really, by the time that you could access music easily on the internet, we were pretty well into high school. And so all the music that reached our ears was big. It was on the radio. It was on Much Music, which is Canadian MTV, but way, way, way cooler. Much Music, one of the coolest things ever to exist, I think. And so, I think just we learned the language of rock music, so to speak, and of what it meant to be a rock band from, like, Radiohead and The Strokes and these bands that were huge. And so our assumption of what a trajectory would look like was always like, that's the goal, the brass ring is to be big. And because A Lesson in Crime and Elephant Shell did so well, and because like indie rock or whatever became temporarily, momentarily, fleetingly semi-mainstream, all these things conflated to basically give us this, what seemed like this golden opportunity to do it, you know, to take this sort of like, whatever, scrappy, exuberant rock and roll thing that we had going on and tweak it and strategically, you know, choose which parts of it to emphasize and which parts of it to tone down in a way that would allow us to be, you know, at the time, what the Black Keys were in the process of becoming, or what Against Me even was in the process of becoming, you know. And I named those two bands because those were two of the bands that were on like the radio circuit at the same time as we were trying to make it happen. And so Making Champ was the first time that we went in with like, we signed with a label, Mom and Pop Records out of New York, who had like a radio staff in-house and who had a bunch of guys on the team who had like track records of signing big bands and who, you know, who knew how, at least purportedly, to like develop a band in a direction that would lead to having hits. And we did it on purpose. And Force Field was like an even bigger expansion of that. And, you know, you listen to a song like Hot Tonight, it's I don't think it's very, it's not hard to detect what we're going for with that, right?
Yeah.
But I always find it necessary to qualify this kind of story, because I think that the myths around the music industry suggest that when bands do something like that, it's because they've been forced by the suits to do it, or because they were only out for the money, or that it was, you know, basically that they suffered through it. They sacrificed their creative honesty for a chance at the brass ring. But it didn't feel like that to us at all. It felt like this is the creative challenge that we're looking for. This is like a new frontier, and you got to go somewhere, you know. You're gonna, like, your music is going to change. You're going to make different songs just because it's impossible to write the same song twice. You can't do it. And we saw an opportunity to choose which challenge we would take, and we took it, and it didn't ultimately lead us to, you know, that great superstar arena rock success. And in retrospect, I can analyze all kinds of things about whether it was good for our career or bad for a career, or you know, whether we half-assed it or whatever. But you know, I think the records are great at the end of the day.
Oh yeah.
And I think that all that really matters is, are the records good? You know, whether it worked in a career way and stuff, it's so nebulous, it's so contingent that worrying about that stuff is just asking for trouble. But anyway, all of which goes to say that by the time we got to Melancholy, to get back to where we started this question, by then it was clear that the arena rock thing, the superstar thing, the radio hit thing was probably not going to happen. That those efforts had not, I wouldn't say they'd been for naught, but they certainly hadn't yielded the intended result. And indeed, we were maybe by then old enough to realize that such a result was not as simple as we'd maybe assumed it had been when we were 24 years old.
Yeah.
And, you know, also we've been in the band for a decade at this point. And also people are moving around the country and moving around the continent, going to the States, going here, going there, getting restless, feeling this, feeling that. And so all of that sort of led to making Melancholy as 2 EPs initially, just to try something different. And all the songs are, you know, I feel like it's probably our most all over the place record tonally, you know, and it was really much a song by song basis. And we thought we could do it. We learned so much making Champ and Force Field specifically that we were like, oh, it's easy to write and record songs. We don't even have to be together. You know, drums can get recorded in LA. We'll do the overdubs of the guitars in Toronto. Yep. And that's how we made that record. And the process of making it sucked super hard. And I can't speak for everyone. I think that all the guys would agree with me. Certainly for me, it was really hard. It wasn't difficult. It was just like emotionally unpleasant. And that's why, you know, as you said, like then you listen to TPC and Melancholy back to back. It's like 2 different bands practically.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
Because TPC was a reaction to Melancholy. We made that record in a room. We wrote the songs in a room together. You know, we recorded it in a room together.
Yeah.
And it was really a reaffirmation of what we thought was important about the band. So that's Melancholy, to me, feels like kind of this weird aberration where it's neither of the original act of our band, but we weren't yet in a new thing. You know, the old world was dying, but the new was struggling to be born. Which is a long-winded way of answering whatever your question originally was.
No, and it's a great answer to it. Just, you know, I think there's such a stark contrast between what those two EPs are, and then what the full length was. Now, one thing in doing a little bit of research, I kind of found interesting, and I wanted to ask you about. So, Champ, you did with Rob Schnaff, who worked with Elliott Smith on a bunch of stuff, which is awesome. So you did Champ with him, and then you did TPC with him as well. So I think there was like an 8-year gap, between those two records. What was it like working with a producer on a record like Champ, which was, a very, very different from a record like TPC? What kind of input did Rob give you guys in working on those two records, like separately, and how was it different over the 8 years, both you guys as a band and him in his, kind of area of expertise as a producer?
It's funny. I was talking to Dave, like in December or something. This Dave, the singer of the band,
mm-hmm.
and he was like, "Yeah, man, I was talking to Rob, and I was saying to him, like TPC sounds really good, but Champ sounds amazing." And Rob was like, "Yeah, well, it wasn't as important this time." And that's like, I feel like the process for making Champ. We were also, when we went to make Champ, we were 23.
Yeah.
We didn't know what we were doing, So he kind of had to teach us how to be ourselves, and that's what I think a really good rock producer will generally do is they'll bring out the best version of what you're trying to create, what they detect you're trying to create.
Mm-hmm.
And with Champ, that took a lot of coaxing, and it took a lot of, thinking and strategizing, and we learned so much from that process because we're nerdy guys and we really sponge up information. And that's why we didn't work with him again right away, because we thought we could do it ourselves after that. Which is, that's the arrogance of youth, baby. But so going back to him after all those years was a really different process in the sense that, we didn't spend a week in a rehearsal space analyzing the song structure because we didn't need to. We knew how to write songs at that point.
Yeah.
And it was a lot. Making Champ was fun, but making TBC was like one of the top 2 creative processes of my entire life, because we knew we were good at what we were doing. And then Rob just had like unimpeachable, total, trustable credibility with us.
Mm-hmm.
And so going through takes of the songs, going through takes of playing guitar, keyboards, or whatever, you had someone there that you just like, if he said do it again or do it differently, you didn't worry. There's none of the ego that comes with being in a band with guys for 15 years.
Yeah.
And also, if he said it was good, you'd believe him. And it's really, really hard to believe that you did something good. And if Rob Schnaff says that's good,
mm-hmm.
you're done. Like and I didn't even realize until after the fact how important that was to have a final voice there.
Yeah.
Because I've worked with a lot of people creatively over the years, a lot of amazing record producers, co-writers, engineers, whatever you want to
mm-hmm.
say. And most of them have been right about most of the stuff, but I've always second guessed, and I never second guess Rob. And that's such a special and important and, like invaluable thing. But unfortunately it's not invaluable. It's very expensive. So we can't work with it.
Touche. I love that. So I just have a question. And I think I've read this on the internet somewhere, that your band name was like just through like one of those random band name generators. So what were some of the other ones that came up?
I have no recollection.
No?
Like still zero. I was there. I remember vaguely the being around the computer in Dave's parents' basement and doing it. And also, I kind of think that maybe we already had Club, and so it just said Tokyo Police or something. Like, that story has been, the edges have been sanded off it over the years out of necessity more than anything else. We wouldn't even tell that story for a long time. For the first, 4 or 5 years of our career, we had some, vague, obfuscating other story that wasn't quite a lie, but very much alluded the truth. Because in 2007, that felt like dorky because you could find one of those on the internet. Now it feels charmingly throwback. Like, I remember the days when that was what the internet was.
Yeah, seriously.
Now, I'm sure you guys have made your way over to Japan and all the crazy touring that you've done.
Mm-hmm.
Do they feel like a sense of national pride because you guys have Tokyo in your band name? It's like if the All American Rejects were from I don't know, Australia or something. I wonder if they would be even bigger here in the States.
They were more blasé than I've ever seen anyone be about anything. We thought this is gonna be so fun. Like no one brought it up, no one asked about it, no one thought it was funny. We were doing a photo shoot, and there was like a little, like, you know, in Europe and a lot of Asia and places, they'll have those sort of like cops little stands, like booths on the street where just like cops hang out inside them, and they're not quite a police station, but it's like, I don't know, it's like a weird little cop corner. And we were walking by one of them, and the photographer was like, "Oh, we should take a picture in front of like a Tokyo police state like booth." And we started doing it, and then the police officer came out and talked to them. And we were like, "What did you guys talk about?" And she was like, "Oh, you know, they asked what we were doing," and I explained to them about the band name, and they were like, "Yeah, you gotta
go." Oof.
And that was it.
That's great.
So, you know, I was gonna wait until a little bit later to ask, just because I wanted to get a little bit of hockey talk in, but I'm just super interested in 10 songs, 10 years. So, all of these covers that you guys did. Now, I want to get back to it, but are Joe and Sal responsible for you guys linking up with Michael and Passion Pit, or did that happen away from?
No, it's all interconnected, but we had, for the beginning of our career, and certainly at that time, our manager, who was from New York, he found Joe through, I can't even remember if it was through a connection or just through like a resume cold call thing. So we met Joe because we needed a merch person. Joe came on tour with us to sell merch. He would be the first to admit, not the world's most successful merch salesman.
Yeah, I think really he's admitted that many times, yeah.
really, really handy as a tech, really knows his way around a guitar, around a pedal, around a drum kit, all that stuff. And so at that time we had this, well, whatever. It's been a long time. I don't want to denigrate anyone. Let's say we had a tour manager whose performance was not satisfactory, and that's putting it mildly. And to the point where I think on like the second tour Joe was on, we had to send the tour manager home halfway through.
Oh wow.
Real, not what you want.
Yep.
But then there was Joe. He didn't take over tour managing, but all of a sudden we had promoted him up to tech.
Yeah.
Because the tour manager had also been teching. Nominally. So then at some point we needed someone else to sell merch, and I think Joe knew Sal. So then Joe linked us up with Sal, and then meanwhile our manager started managing Passion Pit, and I think he just, like, as very often happens, crews will get ported around whole cloth.
Yep.
Like this is so funny to look back on now, but the first couple of Childish Gambino tours, his crew was the Tokyo Police Club crew.
Yeah.
Because like there was some connection where he just wound up. I remember going to a Toronto gig in this tiny little venue, and it was just it was like I was at a Tokyo show. So it's like, there's like Chris Patillo on the ones and twos at front of house, and there's I don't remember who else it was, but and that's how Sal ended up working with Patch Pit, ended up working with Donald. All that stuff. It's not like we did it, but it started with us and then grew from there.
Yeah, I mean, it really is kind of funny because I think a lot of Joe and Sal's success in that industry, really the genesis of which started with you guys, because, you know, I'm pretty sure, and I'd have to ask Joe about it, but I'm pretty sure the going out with you guys is what got Joe recognized back home to start doing the run playing drums for Hopesfall a little bit. And then, of course, I know that Sal, you know, I think he started with the Swellers, and then when he got, you know, started going on the road with you guys, and that's, you know, where, you know, he got picked up with Michael and, you know, Passion Pit and Beyond and Beyond. But so I asked that kind of as an aside, just looking at, you know, 10 songs, 10 years, and all the covers that you guys did. Of all of them, was there one that you had the most fun or enjoyment bringing together?
Well, I mean, Party in the USA, because we really did do it in 10 days, you know? Some of the stuff, like, I think the statute of limitations has probably expired now, where I can say that the audience voting on which covers we were going to do was completely rigged.
Yeah, of course.
And we decided in advance. You don't trust the democracy with something that important. Are you kidding?
No way. Not at all.
You know, there's a reason why the CIA actually, you know, runs all these elections. You got a lot on the line here. Parody. What if my mic just went black right then? The audio just disappeared.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
But we really did do them in a day each, and it was kind of a lot of work. It's like now we could knock it off, but back then we weren't really confident players. We knew how to play our own songs, but it was like we were stretching our muscles more than we were comfortable with. And I might be telling on myself a bit because you listen to those songs and they don't sound hard, but that was tough for us.
Oh,
and it was also at a period we were still touring Champ really, really heavily, and we had very little time off in those days. And so it was like 10 precious days that we weren't on the road. We went out to LA to do this thing. So everyone was pretty exhausted and pretty, loopy, just like being in a house with the same guys again.
Of course.
Doing this, like, ultimately it was really fun, but it was a publicity stunt, obviously. And so, it was a lot, in as much as anything can be a lot when you're in a band, whatever. I feel like all this stuff comes with a disclaimer that, like, I'm not doing anything important, but like I am. It's important. It is important. That's
of course.
Whatever. I don't want anyone to come after me like, what do you think? You're not a brain surgeon, man. You're not on the front lines. That is true.
Hey, but listen.
Anyway, we were zonked, and it was finally the last day, and we'd had like a really fun rotating cast of LA friends who would come through the studio and hang out with us, which really like helped just keep us sane. And on the last day, everyone came, and they brought so much booze. And like a Fudgy the Whale cake.
Oh, yeah.
And we just, because we knew, like, Party in the USA, we're like, we're not going to put a different spin on it. We're not going to do it in, like, a cool style. We're going to play it the way it sounds on the Miley Cyrus record. And the only thing we added was, like, a 2-minute break at the end where we just, we put the name of every state and every Canadian province in a hat. And we took all the friends that were in the studio with us in the hat and 2 bottles of champagne into the vocal booth. And as, like, as we vamped on the record, we overdubbed it with all of us there, and we just passed the hat around, and everyone would take out a name and yell it in like a fun way. And in that 2 minutes of recording, we yelled out every state, every province, and we drank the 2 full bottles of champagne. And so we were just like completely blasted and partying and like playing, Party in the USA, an incredibly fun song. And it wasn't work, it was purely fun. There was nothing hard about it. There was nothing onerous about it. And it's the same thing, like, my favorite show of tour is almost always going to be the last show of tour. It's probably not the best show. Yeah. I probably don't play the best, but it's like, it's this moment of catharsis. And all of the emotion that's gone into it, all of the tension and all of the beauty and the joy and also the, exhaustion and the fact that my liver is failing, it's just breathing out a great exhale. And
absolutely. And it was always fun as being on the other side of the stage, in the crowd, getting to see a last show of tour, because you always know something.
Caught one.
Really?
As you're saying that, because like I feel like New York, especially Long Island, it was either at like the start of the tour or kind of right in the middle of it. I don't feel like people ended many tours in New York.
I guess you would only probably end a tour in New York if you were a New York band. But like I very clearly remember seeing I think it was a Movie Life show where it was like their last show of tour, and like it was just like ridiculous things, like all of a sudden everyone ends up on stage, and this guy from this band is singing this part, this guy is singing this part, and there's silly string or something stupid, or someone ends up getting a beer dumped on them or a water dumped on them, like little things like that.
And but that can be really tricky for the audience, because most people that come to see you don't care necessarily that it's your last show. They like your band and they want to see you play the songs, and that's always the tension. When we're touring to us, playing a gig to us is, it's special to me in the sense, like, I think it's more special to me than it is to anyone in the world in a way, but it's not special in the same way that it is for the audience member, because a Tokyo Police Club show is not a novelty for me.
Yeah,
and so to treat it with respect is important, because there's people there who you can let down if you do it badly, or if you treat it like with disdain or with irreverence or whatever. But at the same time, ultimately, if they're a fan of your band, they're a fan of your honest expression, your hopefully honest expression of your innermost self. And sometimes that expression is sloppy and joyous. And you just hope that the people that come will take that away from it. But I think
I think
we've all seen gigs where we're like, yeah, all right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Uh, but there's something in earnest about that, as someone who's loved music for so long, it's kind of interesting. You want to go to a show and you always want to get your money's worth, and getting your money's worth is kind of intrinsic to every person. So, to the guy standing next to me, getting his money's worth means that, you played all his favorite songs and you played them perfectly. But to me, getting my money's worth could be I was entertained. And of course, seeing one of my favorite bands, having a moment when they're not just playing their instruments, but they're interacting in a human way. And, you get to see someone take a pie in the face or something like that. You're like, wow, this is like, which is one of the reasons why I've been going to Fest in Gainesville for so many years. And that ethos is in that festival 100%. You get to see, bands doing things so much differently than they normally do, taking liberties here and there. And, sometimes you're like, oh, geez, but other times you're like, this is what it is, like where else, where else am I going to get to see my favorite band, like wearing corpse paint for no reason? Or like, why is my favorite band playing, an entire cover set of, Lemonhead songs? Like, what the hell is going on? But I know that I'm never going to see this again. So I think that there's something about that's really cool. But so 10 songs, 10 years is like I said, it's a super cool concept just because, 10 days to put all that together, even if they're songs that are, that aren't the most complicated songs in the world, it's still kind of harrowing to see how you guys ended up putting them together and the spins that you did put on some of them, which was really cool. Have you guys ever thought about revisiting something like that, like in this stage in your career, or is it just like, I don't want to go through that nonsense again?
No, we've talked about it. It's popped up. Our agent, our booking agent, is a big advocate. Every time I talk to him, he's like, "You guys, I really think it'd be good for you guys to do another one." And we, I think we talked around the idea of the Champ 10-year anniversary. It was one of the ideas that we discussed pre-COVID.
Yeah.
But the stars would really have to align. Everyone would have to be into spending that much time on something.
Yeah.
Because now it's hard to get people together. People have kids and stuff. Yeah. So to get everyone to spend 10, 11, 12, how many days it ends up taking fully from stem to stern on a project that isn't like making a record or going on the road, that doesn't like pay immediate obvious dividends, it would take some energy to get it going. And, that hasn't been the place where the energy has gone so far. Yeah. It's certainly a never say never situation, but as of currently, it's low on the priority list. There are other times where its stock has been a little higher. Sure. I would sell on 10 by 10 too.
Fair enough.
But that's not to say that it won't come back.
So I guess we did bring up Joe and Sal, and they're our hometown heroes. But Joe mentioned how when he was on tour with you, no matter what city you were in, you would kind of just like put up a tweet or a message on social media like, "Hey, I'm in so-and-so city, like come play hockey with us." So
yes, we did that for a minute. Well, there was a period in our career when, and this was when we had the big crew that went on to be like the beginning Childish Gambino crew. We were touring on a bus, which we don't do anymore, but was sort of the height of whatever fanciness we ever achieved. And touring on a bus means you got a lot of spare time. Instead of driving all day to the city, you wake up in the city and you don't have anything to do till you have a big crew, so you don't even have to load your stuff in. Yep. So as the guy in the band, like I have to show up at 6 o'clock to sound check, and there's a lot of free time, and we realized that on a weekday, particularly in America, but even in Canada, ice time is really cheap, really easy to come by. And so we just started getting ice time and going out and banging a puck around. At first it was 3 of us. The next time it was 5. The opening band would start to come out. And then I think once we just were like, it'd be fun to have a goalie. And we tweeted about it. And it was so successful that became sort of the MO going forward. That we would, we never turned it into a thing, which I'm really grateful for. We never... if you did that now, I feel like there'd be pressure to make it a contest or make it like to videotape it and put it on Instagram, turn it into content or whatever. But we just genuinely wanted to play hockey, and we would just see if anyone wanted to come play with us. And we didn't develop any lasting friendships. There's no sort of beautiful end to this story. One time someone stole everyone's wallet in the dressing rooms. We're like, sorry, fans, that your wallets got stolen, but so did ours.
Oh, shit.
Oh my God.
Other than, and I don't think it was like one of the fans. I think someone just came in off the street. The doors are just unlocked. You just go into an arena. Someone just rolled in and like went through everyone's pockets. But
Damn.
other than that, it was just like a fun thing that we did. And then the second we stopped touring on a bus, it was never discussed again, and we've never even talked about it since. But beautiful memories, though.
Yeah, and I guess I didn't put two and two together that I guess when you compare it, ice is probably a little bit more affordable here in the States than it is in Canada. However, the amount of rinks has to be less than what you would have in Canada.
Exactly. Yes, it would be touch and go whether there would even be public ice time for rent or whatever in a given city, or there'd even be anyone there to unlock it and let you in. Whereas in Canada, it was pretty much a sure thing that anywhere. We were touring in cities, obviously, but we could have started tour. Like, we would have run out of rock venues to play long before we ran out of ice rinks to skate at.
Yeah.
Amen. Yeah, I mean, I had a friend come to Toronto from Los Angeles a couple of years ago, and he was just astonished at the number of outdoor rinks. And like, the city of Toronto maintains like hundreds of free public outdoor skating rinks.
Whoa.
From like October through April, with boards, and like you can go on a website and see like, okay, this is shinny time, this is free skate, this is like I used to go when I was younger and I still have nothing to do, but when I was younger and I felt like I had nothing to do, I just used to like go, and Joe would come too. We'd just go like find a rink and play shinny with like a bunch of stay-at-home dads.
That's awesome. And it's just completely free?
Yeah, it's sick. We take it for granted. It's completely free.
Wow. Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard of anything like that in the States. Other than every once in a blue moon, it gets cold enough in New York where the ponds do freeze and it's like actually thick enough that you can play. But that's usually a week or two.
There's the ice rink at Rockefeller Center. Just imagine you put boards on that, and there was hundreds of them. Same basic principle.
And not thousands of people on them.
That's the other thing. They're not. I mean, if you were to go on a Saturday afternoon to certain rinks, they would certainly be clogged up. But there's just so many of them.
That's awesome. That's so awesome.
Yeah. And there's also unofficial ones. Guys from the neighborhood will just go flood a baseball diamond. Like the park down the street from my house, someone just like, it's all mud now, but there's just like 2x4s in a big rectangle. And they filled it all in, and guys would come out there at night with hoses and just like freeze it. Or like a tennis court, people flood those and freeze them to skate on.
Now, are you sure it's not Kyle from the Crease Rule? Because we were talking with our buddies Kyle, who was in the process of actually building an outdoor rink up in Toronto as we were recording an episode. So maybe he's your neighbor.
Maybe he's my neighbor. I mean, my dad made us an outdoor rink a few years when I was a kid, and it is a true act of like dadding. You have to get up in the middle of the night when it's ass cold and just stand outside with a hose so that your no good kid can go skating for 4 minutes and be like, I'm bored.
Yeah, right.
That's great. I haven't slept in a week.
Unbelievable.
I was never going to be Wayne Gretzky.
Yeah, but I feel like the story came out, especially with his father just passing away, recently, about his famous backyard rink and how.
Oh yeah, that story didn't need to come out in Canada. The famous backyard rink in Brantford is well known.
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk a little bit about your like Toronto fandom, because that's one of my favorite things to hear is kind of how people got into their team and also some of the memories associated with, being a younger kid or even, middle school, high school age. Some of the memories you have of being a Toronto Maple Leafs fan.
All right. Well, how about this? Since this isn't a live podcast, if I take 40 seconds to have a quick bathroom break and get another beer, then I will really be ready to go off about
Perfect. Let's do it.
All right. Thank you.
We'll just play the Hockey Night in Canada theme song right now.
No, it's owned by TSN.
Don't do it. Never mind.
We'll come after you. Now your cameras are going to go dark when the Canadian CIA comes to get you. But don't worry, they're not very good.
It's your background is so ridiculous. I wish I you need to have that same background for when we do the intro and outro, so I can ask you what kind of plant that is.
It's a fern. Fern Gully.
That is not a fern.
Look at these records I got today, dude.
I can't see because they're blurry with your virtual background.
Can you see them now?
Like, hold it against your... Well, your shirt's green. So,
you see it?
No, so what's happening is your shirt's becoming the green screen.
Oh, it's just keying out?
It's becoming the green screen.
I probably can't show you them. That's okay.
What are they?
A Hot Rod Circuit record. I got this band Baggage that I really like. They used to be the Swellers. I got some others.
Would you go to Smart Punk?
I did actually go to Smart Punk today, yeah.
Is it cool?
Yeah, I did. So cool. Very cool place, yeah.
Did you tell them to sponsor us?
I mentioned to them that were there. I was like, yeah, JJR from Keep Flying recommended I come there. He's like, oh, we love him. So I was like, all right, great. They didn't give me a deal though. They were just like, oh, here's the records that you wanted for the price that they are. And I was like, okay. Sometimes you just hope that like name dropping someone be like, yeah, I know this guy. And they're like, oh, you do discount time. But it doesn't work like that in the real world.
Sometimes it works, but if it doesn't work, it's a dick move to be I don't want them. So you're kind of.
I had to get them. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. I mean, like I was prepared to pay the sticker price anyway, but I was just hoping that I was like, oh yeah, this guy, like I grew up with him. He recommended I come here, and they were like, oh awesome, like have a sticker, like we'll see you next time. That'll be $53, and I was like, yeah, okay, but that's fine. So all right, so I'll do a little 3, 2, 1 dance. So we'll just get back into it. That'd be good for you for editing purposes.
Yeah, that works.
Cool. All right, so. 3, 2, 1. All righty. So, need to know a little bit about this Maple Leafs fandom and how it started. So, Graham, give us a little bit.
Well, it didn't start at any. I know it started when my father was a boy, and possibly before that. It's very much an inherited fandom. And the thing about the Toronto Maple Leafs that I've come to realize is that they culturally, it's like being a Yankees fan. Patriots fan, but in terms of success, it's like being like a Cubs fan. That's a bad team, right?
Yeah.
The Toronto Maple Leafs. The last time the Toronto Maple Leafs won a Stanley Cup, my dad was a child. It was before there was any expansion, and so my entire childhood was just like, yeah, you root for the Leafs. Like hockey's on, and you're a kid, and you just like sports by osmosis, and that's the sport here. Which is interesting because the Blue Jays were real good for a minute there when I was a kid, but I think I was just too young to care.
Yep.
I was like 6 when they were winning the World Series, and that's you can't watch a baseball game when you're 6; it's interminable.
Oh yeah.
But you can watch hockey. It's fast, it's exciting, and all your friends either play it or at least watch it.
Yeah.
You talk about it at school. And so I just used to, and you'd be allowed to stay up to watch a hockey game. It was an occasion. So I would get to have chips or Cheetos and a milkshake, and I'd get to watch the hockey game. And I don't remember them being good or being bad. Obviously 92, 93 was kind of their closest they've come to the championship in my lifetime. But I don't remember watching it, although I don't know if these still exist. They feel like kind of a relic. But, there used to be like when a team would win a championship, they would make a little documentary about it and sell it. Mm-hmm. And my uncle had a VHS that was like a documentary about the Leafs playoff run in 92, 93, which is very, very Toronto Maple Leafs to make a documentary about being eliminated in the semifinals. But I didn't know that. It's got like a serious narrator and like tense stakes and triumphant music and all that. And every time we went to his house, we'd watch the Maple Leafs playoff thing. So that more than anything was probably like the genesis of my understanding what it meant to care about a team, to feel the narrative, And I played hockey for a minute, but I was never that great at it. It was never the main thing in my life. And certainly as soon as I discovered music when I was probably 12 or 13, it got shunted to the side.
Of course.
Quite quickly, but it also came back quite quickly. And I feel like probably because it feels like comfort, right? It reminded me of being a little kid and watching games and getting to stay up and all that. And so I've always kind of had one eye on it. And some years I watch every game, and some years I miss every game. But But this year I've been watching again, although my NHL Live has started not working on my TV, so maybe I'm not watching it. But I mean, I would to be fair, it's supposed to be blacked out all the Leafs games for me anyway, and I was just using nefarious means to get around it, and so maybe the nefarious means finally came back to bite me. But yeah, that's a broad overview of it. I had a jersey from the Sears catalog when I was a little kid, but it wasn't like a real jersey. It was one of like the cheap jerseys you could get. I'm trying to think what else. I had a little Doug Gilmour figurine that lived on top of my amp for years on tour. And actually, I don't know where that amp is, but last time I saw it, it had like, you'll put like yellow tape on all your settings and stuff on tour to make sure that it's fast to get it back. And it had a little square on top of it that said Dougie. And it was in Joe Manzione's inimitable handwriting. And I was like, good old Joe.
Love that. So, when we were in high school, I'm assuming you're pretty much around the same age as Tom and I. The Islanders and the Maple Leafs played in the playoffs that first round, and the Islanders had one of their best seasons, regular seasons, in my lifetime, like that I remember. And like we went into the playoffs either like a number 1 seed or a number 2 seed. Like we were definitely top of the pack. And then we had to play Toronto, and it was one of the most physical playoff series I remember to this day. And, you guys end up moving on and shattering my dreams as an Islander fan.
Yeah, and that was during the golden age of the Fisherman jersey too, if I'm not mistaken. So
it was actually just right after.
Really, that was when you should have won. Okay, so was this after you guys had Wendell Clark and then you traded him back to us?
Yes.
Okay. So this was in like '98 or something.
If
Somewhere
I'm remembering dates correctly, and I'm not always so good with that, it goes back to the 2001 season. So Tom and I were freshmen in high school at that year.
I believe you're right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's when I would have been paying the least attention probably, because I was also, we call it grade 9 here, the same thing.
Yep.
And I was fresh into high school. I was getting into rock and roll. I was getting into like being funny and being, I didn't know what it meant to be cool yet, but in retrospect, we were kind of being like, thrifting our clothes and stuff. And sports didn't really fit into the cultural narrative that we were trying to spin for ourselves.
Mm-hmm. If only you lived in the States, man.
Yeah, it would have been a whole different thing. Well, I'd be into hockey now, is it? Yeah. But I do vaguely remember that time. That was when they were pretty good then. That was sort of the next time after the early 90s.
Oh, yeah.
When it seemed like Matt Sundin and Thomas Caberlet and all those guys. And they would always have every year they seemed to have a different like long-haired Euro guy. Like Sergei Berezin was one, and there was another really good one who I forget now. But there'd always be like a good Canadian boy, and then like his sidekick. Back in the day, it was like Doug Gilmour and Dave Anderchuk, or Wendell Clark and Doug Gilmour. Then there'd be like a Euro winger that was really controversial because they were really good at scoring, but everyone was like, but they're not tough. Which is a very, very Canadian xenophobia, is hating European hockey players for being floaty. That's a classic good old boy mentality. That's Don Cherry mindset.
Yep. Yeah. I was just gonna say that sounds like could have came right out of Don Cherry's mouth.
It probably did many times.
So you guys are in a pretty good position. As we're talking right now. You guys are at the top of the North, and you guys have really been kind of blowing it out of the water. And you've got a incredibly competitive team. What would you think, as far as coming out of the North, you've got like Winnipeg and Edmonton on your heels, but it looks like you guys have it pretty well in hand. So looking ahead, I don't know how they're going to end up like seeding the playoffs. Are they just taking like two for like the top two from each division, or I'm not sure how they're going to do that, but
every Leafs fan knows in their heart what's going to happen. Is that however they seed it, no matter what weird, they're like, we're going to get a computer to do it randomly. We're going to use like the alignment of the stars to choose we're going to end up playing the Bruins and getting eliminated. It's just, this is the thing about the Leafs. You say they look good, and they do. I agree. I've watched them. I've never seen them look this good. Even when in the times I mentioned when they were like a genuinely competitive team. Mm-hmm. They've never looked like this. Dominant, amazing. But you just know in your heart, if you're a Leafs fan, like, Even when they're good, they suck. They're just stupid, and they're going to blow it. That's the Toronto Maple Leafs way. You cannot get away from it. I hope I'm wrong. I'm not.
It's going to be the Justin Bieber jinx now that he did that, like, love to the Toronto Maple Leafs music video. If you guys never win again, it's his fault.
I had a party that the lockout season when they went down in Game 7 to Boston after being up 4-1, and I think that was I'll never believe again. And I've never had a party end like it was like we were hooting and hollering, having a raucous party. Everyone's 24, 25 at like my old apartment. It might have been. It was the apartment that when Joe and I were roommates. It was that place, but I can't remember if he'd already moved out by then. But it was around that era. And then it was in the third period, and I was like, I think it might happen. And one of my dearest, oldest friends, Eric Williams, who was my best hockey player friend. He was like the captain of the AAA rep team, real good. And he was like, all they have to do is score one, and then all they have to do is score one more, and then all they have to do is score one more. And I was like, come on, Eric. And then what happened.
Yeah. And
everyone just silently stood up and left. We didn't like say goodbye. No one. It's just like everyone just went home. It just was the biggest bummer of all time.
I mean, it could have been way worse. Like I've seen, I got on like a YouTube hole of just watching like people destroy their TVs because like things in sporting events didn't happen. And I'm going to tell you something. I would say a good 90% of those videos, believe it or not, it's all soccer. Like you would think that it's like football, basketball. No, it's all soccer. It's all like
you don't understand.
I don't like it. It's all like
it's not the same thing.
It's all like people from Europe or people from like Central America that are like freaking out and just absolutely like destroying their flat screen televisions. Like I saw like someone straight up just like do like a side karate kick right through one. And I was like, this is incredible. And
it's like the air in because I think this is totally out of my ass. This is not sociologically proven. This is probably not true. But I feel like Europe is a much, much older, continuous place. You know, they've been there since forever.
Yeah.
And this is just their new manifestation of like what banner they would rally to or what like, you know, there always had to be something for people to get way too into and then kill each other over that was like didn't really matter. And now it is football. Mm-hmm. It's just the heir to whatever like weird surf problems they had. It's like it's the same people.
I love that.
I mean, I think you're absolutely spot on. I never even thought about it that way, but like I guess
seems unlikely, but yes.
But I mean, like it could very well be. But like I feel like that is such like a hockey fan thing to do. Like you have such passion, like when you go to hockey games or when you're just like cheering your team on. And like, I feel like the dejection of losing is never quite like what it is with, you know, other sports. I feel like it's true dejection. It's like all you could do is kind of hang your head and like Charlie Brown walk like out of the arena that you're in. And then, you know, like sometimes people will heckle you a little bit and, you know, kind of chide and stuff, but
you haven't watched like the videos of Vancouver literally burning its city down when they lose. I guess you haven't watched those yet, Tom.
Well, I remember that happened. I remember that in '94 when the Rangers.
They did it. They did it in the aughts when Boston beat them. Because I was in Vancouver just before that, like just on a trip to visit some friends. When they beat I believe it was the Sharks to advance to the finals. I might be remembering that wrong. And it was, and then I took the adorable Vancouver subway that's like 3 stops. I took it with my buddy back to where we were staying, and it was like people were just like in a happy way. We're just like banging the ceilings and hooting and yelling and singing and stuff. So when I saw it turn in the other direction, I was not totally surprised.
I mean, I've seen those videos, but I'm just like I'm thinking of Islanders fans, and maybe because we're Islanders fans and we're so used to like dejection and like brokenheartedness that like that's what we rely on. Like when we have a tough loss, like instead of like lighting garbage cans on fire, we're just like sadly getting onto the Long Island Expressway and just being like, Another one.
Is there any other way to get on the Long Island Expressway?
Other than
No.
only sadly.
No, only sadly. And
Montreal-
even if you're having a good day, you're still getting onto the LIE in a sad way.
Yep.
I think that we must acknowledge that Montreal is the champion, at least North American, of sports riots. Maybe that's the French heritage coming out, but like they're famous for when Maurice Richard was suspended for hitting a referee with his hockey stick on purpose. He was suspended from the playoffs in a way that cost him the opportunity to like set a record for goals, and they burned that city to the ground.
Yeah.
So and bless them for it.
You got to just know how it is in Canada, Tom, because
I guess so.
Yeah.
Well,
that's the only time Canadians are mad.
Is so interesting. Yes, that's it. The Habs Leafs thing is so interesting too because there's a Catholic Protestantism thing that back in the early part of the 20th century when that was a lot more important. And there is still like in Canadian history there's a ton of francophone anglophone tension obviously. And that manifested in the hockey teams in like a really real way. Especially back when there were no other, there wasn't a Vancouver team or an Edmonton team or anything back in the original 6 days. It was like yeah, like if you were a Habs fan or a Leafs fan, that said a lot about who you were, top to bottom, what your religion was, what language mattered to you, And that stuff was really, really, really important back in the day. I suspect it remains important in some way. But I find that. I have a friend who grew up on the east coast of Canada, in Newfoundland. And he was like, yeah, Newfoundland is sort of its own weird thing where they have their own kind of like independent bent. And, it's a lot of Irish settlers and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And what hockey team you rooted for in Newfoundland? It's very Irish, where it's Protestant or Catholic, and that was like, which one are you? Like,
that was the determining factor. Wow,
the troubles are going on.
So
what team you cheered for said a lot. So that's why my friend is a Habs fan, sadly.
And I wonder what the Canadian blowback was when the Nordiques left. Because I mean, it was like one of the only things that Quebec had. So I imagine every time there's talk about another franchise popping up there, it's probably like a huge hotbed topic.
It is, although Quebec City, for whatever reason, was way less of the like locus for everyone's feelings. The Canadiens were. It was just it was an expansion team, I guess, and I'm not really sure. I don't live there, so I don't really know the ins and outs of it. But I know that it's always been the Montreal Canadiens have been like the team that was the Quebec, the francophone team. Because I know I was just reading. I read that Down Goes Brown history of the NHL book. I got it for Christmas a couple years back and read it. It's a funny, lighthearted book. And he was talking about how there was in like before the original 6, when there was sort of like everything was coalescing. There was another Montreal team that was like the Protestant team, and the Canadiens were the Catholic. And so I think that when the Canadiens won that, they just won the full loyalty of the Quebecois people. But that I'm not Quebecois, and if any Francophone people are listening to this, I take it all with a grain of salt. I don't know what I'm talking about. Different culture.
So such a different world. Like
it is.
Yeah, like all we could say is, Ranger fans, they're just loud jerks, and that's all.
Well, they're getting their comeuppance.
Yeah, but
completely
to have like that
historic
tie is really freaking cool to hear.
Yeah, it is really. I mean, it complicates like the fact that sports is, as I said, for fun. It's made up. But then these are the places where it intersects, and it's like, that part what isn't made up though. The identitarian stuff isn't made up. It doesn't need to be part of sports, but when they got tangled up, it becomes a little more complicated.
And just the one thing I feel about in terms of like cultural relevance and stuff like that is, I feel like in Canada, like legacy means so much more than it does in America sometimes. So like the perfect example I can give about this is when Gord Downie passed away, right? So I mean, the Tragically Hip being like a huge staple of Canadian culture. But that when that news hit, in America, half of the people were like, well, who the fuck is this guy? But in Canada, it was like a huge thing. And I feel like you'd kind of have the same thing with, if a Canadian, like mega hockey player, like God forbid, were to tragically pass away, it would, like cripple the provinces, because it's just everyone is so invested in it. Whereas in America, I feel like everything is fleeting. Like I feel like Paul McCartney dies, like yeah, like America is gonna, everyone's gonna be sad, but like other than that, it's like, I feel like it just only affects pockets of people. Where in Canada, I feel like it's just so widespread, and I find that to be so interesting.
That is true, but then again, I was thinking like Gordie Howe died pretty recently.
Yeah.
And, it was in the news, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't the same. The thing with Gord Downie felt really unique.
Yeah.
I think because he was so young and because he had the ability to go on that farewell tour, it was such a good story where it was like, like when Walter Gretzky died, I was watching a Leafs game, and they came in at the intermission to announce it, and, they do that thing always where they're like, we have to bring you some terrible news. And I was like, oh my God, like 9/11/2 has happened. Like, incredibly old man Walter Gretzky has died. Like, did you know he was still alive? He's not anymore. So that's one thing. And like, it's sad and everyone talks about it and it's on the news and stuff, but it's not the same. Like the Gord Downie thing felt like the country, as you say, came to a halt. I remember I was out and about the night of their last show, which was simulcast on the CBC, talking, that Our Nation's broadcast.
Yep.
And without commercials, all that stuff. And like everywhere you went, every bar, it was like in a disaster. I just watched Armageddon the other night, and like that, that movie trope where someone's walking through the streets and they pass a TV store and that they see the news on the. It's the only time that I've actually seen that happen, where people were like just on the streets looking at any screen that was near them, and they were all live playing the Last Tragically Hip show.
Wow, it's just
it's such a thing.
It's so alien, because like that type of like. Maybe regionally you'd get it some places in America, but like, the entire country coming to a halt for something, I think is so interesting. And I think it says a lot, like I said, about how Canadian culture and American culture are so different, because America is so ridiculously like diverse in everything, where, we could sit here and talk about hockey, which, excuse me, so many people love, but as you mentioned in the beginning of the episode, it's a counterculture here. It's an alternative to what really is popular, whereas there are so many dimensions of it up in Canada, because to some people it's life, to some people it's just a part of what makes Canada what it is, and then to some people the alternative is not hockey. So the alternative, like you said, is, well, I'm going to go and be a Raptors fan, I'm going to be a Blue Jays fan, so or God forbid, I'm going to be a CFL fan. Does that still exist? Like the Toronto Argonauts?
Well, it was in the news recently that the CFL and the XFL are in talks.
I did see that.
Because the CFL does still exist, but they're, unlike NHL or Major League Baseball or whatever, the margins are tight, and the pandemic has really hit them hard. They can't make payroll and stuff. So I'm not a big enough fan to know what's going on. I personally. Obviously, American football players are better, but I think there is a lot to be said for the Canadian game. It's like a fun change. The 3 downs thing is nuts.
Yeah.
The fact that all the kickers are doing like half the work is really funny. And I find it charming. And there's parts of this country like Saskatchewan. The only sport they have there is the Saskatchewan Roughriders.
Yeah.
And so that's like, it's a huge, huge deal for them. And I find that to be charming and delightful, although it's not a sport that I go out of my way to watch.
Yeah, and I think the CFL should be very, very cautious to get into bed with the XFL and Vince McMahon, because knowing Vince McMahon, he's never really treated his Canadian wrestlers very well. So
is it still Vince? I thought it was like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson now, who is, as we all know, half Canadian.
Yep. He let me tell you, I think he has a controlling interest in it. I think Vince McMahon still owns it, or maybe The Rock bought it from him. I don't know, but I think it's an interesting thing, because you want to any opportunity you get to see these kind of smaller sports organizations beef up and bolster is really cool. But the CFL is just something I've never really put my finger on. But maybe we should start a CFL podcast or something. I don't know.
That I'm sure there's one out there. It's probably government subsidized. I was going to say that the NHL in Canada too, it feels like it's on the edge of, a real slide into irrelevancy, partially because the barrier to entry in hockey is quite high. It's very expensive to play hockey. When your kid needs full new suite of equipment every single year, it's also, they've done an extremely bad job culturally modernizing the game. It's still incredibly white. It's still, as we see, all this like super racist and homophobic. The culture of it is still really backwards and like old fashioned. Mm-hmm. And there's been no real sincere effort to change that. They always, like, if someone gets caught doing something, they pay lip service to it. But you contrast that with, basketball is obviously, it seems to me, the most progressive major league sport by a fairly wide margin. Mm-hmm. But even when I watch like baseball and NFL football, and I know the NFL is not a force for good in this world, politically speaking, but you still see like the way that the players have some agency. Just the fact they let them put, like, I know it's meaningless to put a slogan on your helmet, but they wouldn't let them do that in the NHL. That would that would be on the news in Canada. They'd be like, a controversy is brewing about whether or not like racism is okay. And because it was through the lens of hockey, we would have to have that conversation. And like all those Don Cherry voices are still very loud. And I think all that is combining to make it like, why would my kid go play hockey where they're going to get a degenerative brain disorder from getting creamed into the boards constantly, and also either be harassed for who they are or learn to harass people for who they are. And it's going to cost me thousands of dollars every year. Here's a soccer ball. Have fun, And I think it's a shame because it's such a beautiful, good sport. But and that's part of the reason it's not cool here, is that it's like, I feel like when I tell like my cool friends I like hockey, I have to be like, I just think it's a really exciting sport. I'm not trying to say that I'm like on board with the culture of it, which is really quite ugly in most ways. And it's such a shame. Like it's not that hard to fix that stuff if you honestly want to do it. And that it says that sadly, there's not a lot of motivation right now. That could change tomorrow. All it takes is some new commissioner coming in and being like, let's do this right. It could happen.
And that's something that I think a lot of hockey fans are really hoping for, because again, it being alternative in a lot of ways in America, a lot of the people who really love hockey are people that are so far the opposite way in terms of the ethos that the NHL seems to push forward. And a lot of that change is really something that like everyone's been chomping at the bit for. But you just got to hope, that a commissioner comes in or some changes made where there's more inclusivity. There's more people of color, offered opportunities to just play the game, without getting hazed in locker rooms.
Oh God.
Mikey and I, are close to the Josh Hosang story, which is, when you hear the kind of shit that he went through, it just kind of makes you sad. But it also, the blowback from that is, Josh Hosang notoriously has a quote unquote bad attitude and all this stuff, but like, you can almost understand why, when you go through that kind of school, you go through that. You have to have a capacity to be able to absorb that. And, as a young kid, sometimes it's just so hard to do, to absorb that kind of negativity. It's crazy.
That's actually, this makes it feel like now we've tied all the things we've been talking about together. Because this idea that in the States, it's not a mainstream sport, it's more of a niche sport, gives me more hope. Because in Canada, it's like what the NFL is there, where there's from a business standpoint, from a capitalistic standpoint, you're like, well, if we do anything, if we let our players go out there and kneel for the anthem, if we do anything that seems, and I'm going to put this in big scare quotes for anyone that's not watching this on video, too woke, which is by a lot of people's definition, literally anything at all, sadly, but will alienate, like the angry grandpas will start throwing the remotes at the TV. And in the States, hockey might not have that problem because the angry grandpas are watching football. So maybe that is the avenue. And obviously Canadians love to get salty about the Americanization of hockey. And they love to get salty about Seattle getting an expansion team, or about Arizona keeping a team that they just keep selling to a succession of flim-flam men rather than moving it to Canada. But that might be the avenue through which the game is preserved. That might be the best hope.
Absolutely.
And
for
I
sure.
never thought that before. That's speaking of Arizona, this past draft, a story came out that there was a Canadian who in juniors was like bullying kids and,
Oh
making
yes, ugh, yes.
making like homophobic slurs and things like that. And the Coyotes terminated that draft pick. Like they were like, "Yep, we're not taking you. Like, good luck somewhere else." So
Ah,
I
baby
do,
steps.
yeah, I do think that here in the States we're trying to make some changes, definitely. And it's just so funny because Chris Barker from Anti Flag has to have this conversation when he goes over to Canada and plays over there because these kids are like, "How do you like hockey? Like, we don't get it. Like, I was bullied by hockey players," and he's like, "Dude, man, that's not the way it is in the States. Like, we're the
Yeah.
skate punk kids in the States. We're the outcasts."
I've never thought this is my favorite part of this whole interview. Is just learning, or actually like focusing. Because I kind of sensed that it's obviously less popular in the States, and I sense
Mm-hmm.
that cooler Americans are into hockey than Canadians. Uh, but I never quite put the two and two together here, where it's culturally it's so different, and the idea that who bullies you when you're a kid? It's just different athletes. I mean, it's
Yeah.
kind of,
Yeah.
sadly, it's as simple as that.
And it sucks. It really does suck because, like you mentioned before, hockey is such a beautiful sport, and the game itself, even though there are some aspects of it that are a little barbaric, but I mean, like, just the whole idea of like these five guys on the ice that are, you know creating essentially a masterpiece of plays in order to just like dazzle and do all these incredible things is just so much different than any other sport. And that's not to say that the finesse in basketball or football or baseball is downplayed. It's just a little different. And
Absolutely.
what makes it even more different is the fact that you're also you're while you're trying to do all this stuff, you're fucking gliding on ice. I mean, it's just like that alone. Like, you can't put a pair of skates on me. Like, it just won't work. Like, my body frame and skates, it won't happen. Like, I'll break my ankles in half before
You
I
could
could
do
even.
it.
You say that, but like,
Because if you were Canadian, you would know how to skate
yeah,
unequivocally. It's like every American can throw a halfway decent spiral.
yep,
Not every Canadian, but like the chances are, if you grow up in Canada, and especially, hopefully, this is changing, especially if you're a boy,
hmm
you just like you get on skates. My Dave, the singer in Tokyo, his family's Irish, and he was born in Dublin, and they moved here when he was 2. And the way he tells the story is so funny that it was like a monk's family scheme to be like, all right, now David, I've noticed that all the boys here are playing hockey. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna get you signed up for some hockey, and that's how we're gonna launder you into this culture.
You're gonna
And I remember
assimilate you.
we knew each other at that point, and we'd been, when you're a kid, you're friends sometimes and you're not friends other times. And I can't remember if we were friends or not when he was playing, but I remember Dave's always been a really tall, skinny guy, and they somehow got him. They were buying the equipment, and they somehow got him like they must have been football shoulder pads. If they weren't, they were like shoulder pads for a dog man that was much larger than him. But Dave was just on the you'd be watching a game, and there'd be all these 11-year-olds, and one of them would just be towering above the rest of them, and also just have shoulder like Garth Snow on the Philadelphia Flyers, just like shoulder pads the size of a fridge. But he was still learning how to skate, so just sort of stiffly, awkwardly moving around the ice, and yet he can skate, and so anyone can.
I just, yeah, I love it. I really do. So one last thing before we let you go for the night. It's been such a pleasure, getting to chat with you. I feel like I have to publicly and like personally acknowledge and thank you specifically because I never got the opportunity to for adding a layer of keyboards onto some of the Concrete Houses songs because I know that was you. I'm pretty sure that was you, wasn't it?
I think I did some keys. This was a
See,
long time ago. I remember vaguely talking about it, and I think I did it, but I couldn't.
I think
swear
you
to it
did.
anymore.
I think you did, and I think
I hope I did.
I'm pretty sure you did. So I'm just going to use
will.
this last time
Let's do it.
to thank you for that because we wrote this song that for the longest time we kept calling it the Lit song because like the opening salvo sounded just like that weird Lit song from the 90s, and it ended up being yeah, kind of like that.
Song's a jam.
And it ended up being like the song that for some reason of all the Concrete Houses songs that Sal and I did, and then Joe and Dave and everyone that was part of it, was the one that I was the most proud of because it sounded so different from anything we did. and your extra layer on that was super cool. So I just wanted to do
I
that.
have had. I guess you're welcome. Although we can withdraw this if it turns out it was someone else. But no, I've had very scant opportunities to play on other people's records. I'm not terribly technically adept at keyboards or any instrument. So whenever someone asks me, I'm so touched by it, and I've got I played piano on one Pup song, which I feel like will probably end up being the most popular thing I ever was part of. And then awesome. my friend's band Pony, I played a bunch of keys on her record that's coming out soon, and I just love it. It makes me feel so good. It's like a gift that they give to me. So I'm thrilled that you brought this up.
I'm literally, as we're doing this, I'm texting Sal, and I'm like, please tell me that he did this. I'm saying I'm interviewing him right now and talking to him about this actually
on live air.
I love it.
Oh my gosh.
God bless Joe and Sal. I mean, Joe has played drums for me, like solo stuff, many times. I have a band, a side project band called Girl from Material, that I tried multiple times with full sincerity to convince Joe to be the drummer of. And he was like, I'm not. I have a life.
Listen, Joe, the last thing that I just want to bring up, and then we will bring this to a close.
I will talk to you all night, my friend. I'm having a blast.
No, and I appreciate that. I really do. But
I know Michael's added it. So
no, you're fine. Joe, where you've probably seen him do this, and I gotta collect my thoughts because I gotta think of what it is. I know what it is now. So Joe is notorious for wearing this cutoff TSOL shirt. Have you seen him wear it? Okay, so this all goes full circle because that is the most iconic Joe thing in the history of mankind. I think he told me that he actually either lost the shirt or something happened to it. And now I just got word from Sal. He goes, nah, he didn't. Did he say he did? And I'm like, no, I said he did. And he's like, uh-oh.
And I went along with it. So who did? Was it one of the Passion Pit guys then?
Oh, maybe it was. Was it Michael?
Maybe it was Ian or something.
Oh, you know what? You're right. I think it was Ian. Hold on. This doesn't make for a great podcast right now because I'm literally just texting someone. Yeah, he goes, Ian from Passion Pit.
Ian from Passion Pit. Okay, so Ian is the Graham of Passion Pit. So it's it's an easy mistake to make.
We're just gonna keep.
I wish I'd played keys on that song. When you guys reunite and do new songs, send them to me. I'll play keys.
Absolutely. And he goes, I love that you're interviewing Graham, and I just told him that when we next do songs, you are penciled in to play keys, and he just said, yeah. So
that's right.
That's all I got on that. So
I remember touring, and Joe and Sal would often, when one guy was driving, the other guy would sit in the old passenger seat there because they were buds. And they would play, and this was like my introduction to a lot of hardcore music that I probably have never listened to since.
Yeah.
And they would both air drum along, but because Joe is left-handed and Sal's right-handed, I can see it so vividly in my mind's eye, watching them do like mirror image drum fills exactly the same way to each other, and just feeling, on the highway on like day 20 of a tour, hour 9 of a drive, and just feeling like there's nowhere in the world I'd rather be than here right now.
Honestly, I love this because this is bringing memories to me back, like vivid ones of them like air drumming and doing ridiculous things. I miss those guys to death, but they're both.
Me too.
They're both thriving. I
know it's so good.
Joe is an expectant father. Sal is already a father. Love both of those guys to death. And Graham, man, I love you to death too, buddy. I can't thank you enough for giving us this insight into Tokyo Police Club, which, I know our listeners are going to love it, but I'm spoiled because like I said, have loved Tokyo Police Club, and just getting a little bit of insight from you on some of these songs and some of these things is just super cool to me. So I really appreciate you taking the time to chill with us, man.
I'm spoiled because imagine someone just wanted to sit down with you for 90 minutes and you just told them about your 20s, and you got to talk about your 20s, And that was like, people were like, yes, I want this. And it wasn't your therapist. Like, I feel like I understand. I have this gift where I understand the narrative of my life so much better than I would otherwise, because I get to do interviews. And the whole time I've been doing interviews and talking about it, and I get to take my experience and put it outside of my brain and like pick through it. And people ask me questions about it. And it's, I love doing interviews so much. It's genuinely one of my favorite parts of the job. And this was such a fun one. That's why when I was like, I'll go all night, I was like, I hope you ask me to go all night. I'm going to close. You guys are going to shut down the Skype, and I'm just going to sit here for an hour telling stories to like myself in the preferences pane.
Love that.
Absolutely,
This
man.
is why no one wants to date me.
No, listen, I'm sure you're a very eligible, and Sal just keeps yelling at me. He's like, did he say he played on it? Did he say it? Did he say it?
I didn't say it. Send him the tape. No. I only believed you that I did because I have a bad memory.
No, it's all good.
God, I love it. What a note to end on.
No, absolutely, man, for sure. So, super excited. As far as real quick, as far as Tokyo Police Club is concerned, anything on the horizon specifically that we should keep our ear to the ground for?
Well, I mean, there's a few tours that most of my job right now involves postponing over and over again. There's going to be a champ tour.
Awesome.
When I don't even want to speculate anymore. We obviously, we did the whole 10-year thing. I just like last week finished mailing out the last of the pre-orders and stuff. We're out of the pedal to the metal phase of our career. We're not touring 8 months, 9 months out of the year anymore. Mm-hmm. So we'll make another record, but like the conversations about it have been entirely hypothetical. Again, people are, Josh is in the States. He can't come here really.
Of course.
It's so, but we were gonna take 2020 pretty much off anyhow. So we're not like really off whatever schedule we had. It's just that now the future is unclear, but we'll I think that we're just in a good spot now where we'll keep going at our own pace. And so there'll be more music and there'll be more gigs. When they happen, I don't know. But Dave has a solo album that he's, I hope I'm not telling tales out of school. He hasn't announced it officially yet, but he sent it to me. And it rules. And I can't wait for it to come out. I love it when Dave does solo stuff because I can just be a fan. I don't have to worry about like not making it worse with my guitar parts. And then I have a solo thing that's going to come out at some point this year. And
awesome.
So the Tokyo Police Club like cinematic universe continues to expand, but the central franchise, I'm not 100% sure when the new thing will come, but it will come.
That's all good. And that's all that we can hope for, man. So Graham, thank you so much for being with us. Appreciate you talking Maple Leafs and Tokyo Police Club. And hopefully we'll come back to you when the playoffs come around. And if for some crazy way the Maple Leafs and Islanders end up squaring off, I think we're going to have a different type of conversation where it's not as joke and it's more.
I would love that.
More Dukes,
But you did get it. You correct. It is Maple Leafs, not Leaves. Important that everyone knows that.
Leafs.
Because it's named after a thing. Like it's not wrong either. It's named after a singular like proper noun that was like an army squadron or something. And so the Maple Leafs is the correct pluralization.
I'm glad that I got that right. I want
to make sure all the Americans who care so much know.
Excellent, man. Graham, again, thank you so much. I hope you have a good rest of your night, and
you as well.
We will be in touch with you, and we'll make it happen. All right, buddy.
I can't wait. Go. Good luck to the Islanders.
Thanks, we need it.
And good luck to us all.
Exactly. Have a great night.
Thanks so much, boys. Take it easy.
Got it.